Good evening, folks. And here's a wonderful topic I can finally start talking about with some degree of clarity, if that's even possible when talking about this movie, and that is the Rise of Skywalker. I just saw it on Sunday with the Reply guys. I don't know what we call each other right now, but oh boy, what a trip. I'm still processing it, and I am doing a video about it later, either today or tomorrow. Try to get it out. But man, what a crazy ride that was. So here's an article by Forbes by Danny D. Placido. Months after release, The Rise of Skywalker is still trying to fix its plot holes. Plot holes are one of the other problems of the movie. There's many problems with the movie. I'm not going to get into them right now, but the plot is certainly one of the big ones. And things happen so quickly you can't even begin to process what happened. And I don't think that was the intention of the director or the writer. They just wanted to do cool things, wrap things up as fast as possible, and don't worry about the details, which you don't do in the end of any kind of trilogy. You want all the details or all the questions that were raised by your first two movies or first two stories or first two chapters to be answered. So how do they answer plot holes? We don't know, but we do get tweets from the Star Wars Holocron on Twitter. What a great way to find out what happens to your media. What was wrong with these characters in your story? Well, don't worry. Just go to Twitter and the social media owners of that brand will tell you. So did you know the Sith Eternal Fleet seen in Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker was created by Sith cultists on Exegol who indoctrinated Exegol's population with Sith values and raised and trained their children to become officers, mechanics, and soldiers for the Final Order. So it sounds like you have this entire population of a planet who are religious zealots or impose this religious zealotry on their children, who then grow up and they make other generations who build these giant ships and run them. I guess they live on them underground. And they train in military maneuvers, etc., waiting and waiting. This is at least one generation, because it's been 30 years at least. So you have two generations of indoctrinated people, and slaves, or whatever you want to call them, of just people waiting around, building giant death machines. And each of these giant death machines have the capacity to destroy Exegol. Like I want you to wrap your brain around it. So everyone's building this weapon of mass destruction, which is also a ship, and there's hundreds, there's thousands, there's tens of, I don't know how many there are. There's so many, and they can all blow up the planet that they're actually coming from. Just imagine the safety regulations and the protocols involved preventing the weapons. How would you test this thing? How would you make sure every ship has that capacity? It's kind of a strange thing to say, oh yeah, we're making a bunch of Death Star weapon-sized Star Destroyers. We think. We haven't tested them all yet, but I'm sure they have that capacity. So the funny thing about this tweet is it got replied to by Elijah Wood, of all people, and he says, no, how could we have known? Because it wasn't in the story. We just see a bunch of crazy people in the Sith temple or the Sith throne room, which is like a giant Colosseum thing, where there's all these crazy people chanting and wearing robes and worshiping the Emperor. I don't know whatever that does. I guess he likes the crowds. I don't know. Much like a smug... sorry, just... This movie is so bizarre. Much like a smug tweet from Harry Potter author JJ Rowling, it's a late addition to a poorly thought out story, an attempt to smooth over the cracks. Yeah, the cracks. More like the gaping holes. Elijah Wood's cold response says it all. The tweet perfectly illustrates why The Rise of Skywalker felt so shallow. It's a film fueled by momentum. And by momentum, that's about all there is. It's just scene after scene. There are questions just start popping up, sometimes within the same scene. This happens the first 10 minutes of the movie. This happens when they are on that weird another desert planet where they fall through the sand, and there's just scene after scene in that cave. Just so many questions just start popping up. Just so much crap that you can't just do that. You can't just introduce elements to a story, especially the third chapter of a trilogy, and expect people to digest it and go, oh, yeah, that was good. That was a good scene. And this happens multiple times throughout the story. While watching, I assumed that Palpatine magically conjured his fleet using abilities that some consider unnatural. Yeah, because of course he just waves his magic hands because he's a Sith, and he just builds starships that have the destructive power of a Death Star. It makes no sense. And how do they miniaturize that power into a Star Destroyer? Remember, Death Stars are gigantic. They're the size of planets or large moons. How did they do that? How did they? I mean, sure, you got 30 years to perfect this technology, but how? How did you get from A to Z? Time? Just now in the Star Destroyer format? Death laser? Blows up planets? Really? Like, those guns were smaller than the autocannons on the Dreadnought from the First Order in the Last Jedi, in Episode 8. Like, it's just like, whoa. Like, things have to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, right? Also, it's not exciting. If it's not big, it's not exciting, apparently. Turns out those were innocent people piloting those ships. All those guys in the red armor, all the military structure, all the engineers, all the mechanics, the droids, everything. They were all brainwashed and enslaved and dedicated their miserable lives to building and maintaining a gargantuan fleet that never launched. They hovered in the sky, sure. They got out of the ground, stupidly. I don't know why they were built in giant hangars on the crust of the planet, like right beneath the surface. Like, why would you do that? Why would you have them just in subterranean shipbuilding hangars and then just break through the ceiling, which is this, which is the crust of the planet, and then just sit there because now that they can't escape because they don't know what up is. Even though they literally just came from down. They don't know how to keep it. They don't know how to climb higher. Oh, this movie is so stupid. To the Exegol natives, that scene was closer to destruction of Alderaan than that of the Death Star. From their point of view, the Jedi are evil. I don't know. We have no understanding of the people of the planet. No culture, like nothing. They're just a bunch of mindless slaves. Of course, that really wasn't the point. Those ships only existed so that there would be a final showdown between the heroes and the bad guys, which is stupid. They could have a showdown in any other number of ways. But the odd thing is there was already an army waiting to be confronted the First Order. Yeah, they sort of just went, oh yeah, we have these other ships. Not as many as the Emperor had, but certainly there were other ships. They already had the galaxy under their thumb, so why'd they need even more ships? We don't know. Why did the script of the Rise of Skywalker utilize them instead of fabricating the First Order? Or, we don't know. It's as if JJ wasn't even aware of his previous movie. Like, you have this thing called the First Order, JJ. What'd you do with it? Oh, don't worry. We have Exegol ships. Those are much more important. Again, that's just one of dozens of questions to add to the list. For example, who is Palpatine's lover? There's a big, scary one. Did Palpatine's child inherit Force lightning powers too? Why did Rey's parents believe that selling her into slavery on a desolate planet would protect her? Lots of other questions surrounding the parents. This is a big one. Why was 3PO's programming to translate Sith but not tell anyone about it when he was built by Anakin? Did he get a software upgrade that changed that? Like, is there something against the Sith that you're not allowed to talk about? Like, you can translate. You have the technical capacity, but because he's a protocol droid, he won't actually do that for anyone. It's kind of like I know Japanese, but I'm not gonna translate things in Japanese because it's against my programming. You're like, why? What's the point? What was Finn trying to tell Rey? And what on earth was the point of the Knights of Ren? Yeah, JJ, that thing you created. Why would you do that? It's like the worst ideas. The opposite of Chekhov's gun. It's like, okay, we're going to show a gun in one scene, In the next scene, we're going to play with it, but we're never actually going to fire it. We're just going to keep pointing to it and holding it and loading it up, but never actually using it. We don't know what the Knights of Ren are for or what they do. Some of these questions don't really matter. Then why does the narrative bring them up? You see, the narrative speaks for itself. If you can look at a movie or read a book or any kind of script and go, okay, stuff happens and it goes nowhere, that's a question that is raised. Scenes that go nowhere, either that's the point of the scene, meaning a person is talking to another person, maybe they're having a date, it's an interpersonal romantic story, and they have an argument and then the date just ends, or rather the scene just ends, you assume nothing happened after that because they were in an argument, and that's that. They parted ways. That's what you have to do with ideas and stories. You have to actually pay them off, or else why would you introduce them? Chekhov's gun. It's very important. Although I don't buy the Finn force sensitivity explanation, that's, again, a very cheap way out. Everyone's slightly force sensitive here and there. It's like, oh. The point is that there shouldn't be so many plot holes in the first place. Yes, that's true. Stories should have a working plot, and it should work on multiple levels, not just for people who pay attention to stuff, but on the genre at least. You're talking about a sci-fi genre on a franchise level that, consistency within the genre makes sense. Technology does not suddenly make jumps of that scale after 30 years unless explained. Again, I don't mind that these Star Destroyers can have Death Star levels of power. You just have to really sell me on the idea that they can. Like, there's technology, some crazy scientist, some new element, give us something. That'll be like, great, fine. You have to do the basic necessity of detail to explain how things are able to be achievable. Like, you have enslaved a planet to make a bunch of Star Destroyers. Okay, fine. That's step one. Step two is showing me their culture, showing me how they talk and communicate, and their religion. Give me a typical family from this race of indoctrinated people that build starships and live on them underground, which is the craziest thing. Hey, Mom and Dad, we're gonna be part of the Final Order. Okay, we're gonna go live on a hangar bay under the planet, and that'll be our life for the next 30 years or whatever. It's strange, but that's what you got to do. That's the story they gave us. They have to show us how that works. So Star Wars fans have to do research to understand the main storyline of the film, which is silly. Not only is it silly, that's not how stories work. It's not the audience's job to fill in plot holes or fill in holes in the story. It is the writer's job to answer the questions the narrative itself has created. And that should be evident by anyone who writes something. And if you're not paying attention, if you're not understanding your own words, you have no business writing. If you cannot grasp the dimension of the words and scenes and characters and plots and themes and feelings that you yourself are writing, you do not deserve to write that story that you have in your head. It's strange. It's like, oh, well, I didn't mean it, but now that you think about it, I didn't think it had this other element. It's like, no, that should never occur to you. That should be present that should be the reason why you write, because you have such a juicy idea that you want it to be explained in levels. That's why you write that. It means so much. It means multiple things to you, the writer, to then make something. That's why you create. The Rise of Skywalker was seemingly made with the assumption that the audience doesn't care to know why things are happening. Exactly. It's made for the fan who doesn't think. It's made for the lowest common denominator, people who aren't paying attention. The lazy, popcorn-munching, brainless slobs or idiots or whomever who just don't care. They don't care about plot. They don't care about continuity. They don't care about what happened before. They just want to see things blow up. Fun, dramatic, melodramatic crap blow up on the screen. And there's nothing wrong with having movies like that. But you have to realize there are right and wrong ways to do that. And you can have a great script with a Transformers story. You can do that. It can work. It can work on multiple levels. But you still have to actually make a good story regardless of the genre you're writing for. It's a strangely condescending attitude toward a fandom that has always craved complexity, that yearns to know the details behind every blaster, lightsaber, and background character seen on screen. It is sad, but that's JJ Abrams for you. The Rise of Skywalker is riddled with plot holes, and perhaps those holes could provide opportunities for the extended universe to tell some interesting stories in the future. Absolutely not. That is a bad idea. If you really want to fill in the blanks of Exegol, good luck. That is going to be one really sad story. Oh, look, this movie that everyone is questionable about, we're getting a backstory of Exegol. Oh, yay. The life and times of your average religious zealot that's going to build a ship till they're 40 or 60 or whatever, and the old guard of people who are enslaved to think, or forced to either killed or forced to think of the new religion that took over the planet. Can't wait. Great story. But I think it might be time for JJ Abrams to retire his famous mystery box story. I think it's time for JJ Abrams to retire. Just this is where you end the sentence. There's only so many times an audience can open an empty box before they feel shortchanged. There you go. So there you are, Mr. D. Placido. Thank you for your blog post. It was rational. It was asking all the good questions, because really there's so many questions in the Rise of Skywalker. And I'm struggling to make that video, guys, so I do apologize if I'm taking my time. But it's hard. It's hard to get through. So thanks for listening. Hope you guys have just as many questions as I do, because, oh my goodness, I'm still reeling from that Monday showing, or that Sunday showing. Have yourself a great evening, folks.